Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima. Welcome back to Blue Boards. This time we're going to be taking a look at Scout by Kei Kajino. This is a card game that is actually really interesting because in most card games you are allowed to take the cards in your hand and rearrange them in any way that you would please. However, Scout changes a few things about this idea and it actually makes for a really interesting sort of game. So, let's just take this hand that I've just drawn randomly here from this deck. So the idea of this game is that you cannot rearrange your hand in any way, shape, or form once the game starts. The one thing that you are allowed to do is you are allowed to flip your hand over. So you can see you've got a secondary line of numbers down there, and those numbers will tell you what's on the other side, so that you can choose to take that hand or stay with the hand that you've got. And then when it comes around to your turn, you are able to play some cards out, depending on where they are in your hand. So, an example is we could play out a single card, like this 3 for example, if there was nothing else on the table whatsoever, but that's probably not going to last very long. We also have the opportunity to play a run, which is a series of consecutive cards, 2 or more, as long as they are next to each other in your hand and they are going up or going down. It doesn't matter which way. So, we could play out that 5 and that 4 there. Or we could play a pair. Now, pairs beat runs, so we could play this 2 5s here as a set, and we would take this 5 and this 4 here and put them face down like that. However, number of cards always beats any particular other factor. So, if we were to just take this and do this, now, I'm just using this as an example, okay? So if I were to play this 6, 7, 8, despite the fact that it is a run, it actually beats the 2 5s. So we take the 2 5s, put them in the score pile, that is now the active hand, and everybody else has to beat that. But eventually, you're just going to get to a point where you've got a hand that's just blatantly unplayable. So let's just say this 6, 7, 8 here wasn't actually ours, it was an opponent's. So what are we going to do to actually help us out with that? Well, if you've got no playable cards in your hand, you can take a Scout token, give it to the opponent, and then you are allowed to take either the leftmost card or the rightmost card of the current hand, and put it anywhere in your hand in any orientation. So I could take it as a 2, I could take it as an 8, and I can put it anywhere in my hand. And you can use that to build up your hand, to give you new scoring opportunities, to make it so that it's easier to get those scoring opportunities. And that's where the game is interesting, because there are so many ways to play around with this simple 10-number concept, and every new hand presents itself a new puzzle. You've got this random combination of cards, and I'll just give us a brand new hand from this deck just so I can give you an example of what I am talking about if I don't send the cards splaying out everywhere first. So everyone will get this deck. Some cards will be removed depending on player count. So we'll just take this and just lie it out on the field here for us to see. If I was going first, I could think to myself, okay, if we put out this 9, that means the 2 6s are now next to each other, so we could play with them, but I might not have that option. So someone else may have played another 9 for me to scout out, and I can play that, then the 6s. I've got a 6 and a 7 here, so if I manage to scout out an 8, I can stick it in there, or I can play the 6 and 7 to get them closer together, so that I can play the 7 and 8, and then the 2 and the 3 will be next to each other. So I play the 6 and the 7, and then when I get the opportunity, I play the 7 and the 8, and then the 2 and the 3 end up next to each other in my hand. If the board manages to be cleared out for whatever reason, the 9 can just go out, and then my hand can just continue flowing downwards like that.
It's this sort of hand collapsing motion which is the satisfying part of playing Scout.
And it's a really clever little system because it always keeps you thinking about not only the move you're about to make, but the move you need to make in the future because of just how your hand can collapse down. Because there is also something clever about the way this game handles scoring. So let's just pretend that this is our score pile here. And let's pretend that we managed to get rid of a bunch of these and our opponents gave us a few Scout tokens in order to get some cards from us, and someone else manages to end the round. So the amount of points you get every round is the amount of cards in your victory pile, your score pile, the amount of Scout tokens you have, minus the amount of cards in your hand. So it is a race to empty your hand as fast as humanly possible. In this particular case, we would get 5 points. Thank you, brain. That was surprisingly slow. So, it's just this interesting race to empty out your hand. You need to think ahead in order to figure out exactly where your hand is going to go. And considering that everyone is going around the board playing out their own hands, giving you new scouting opportunities, because you might decide to, you might have, say, this, and your opponent has played out this 6, 7, 8. Now, you could play this 6, 7, but you could also scout it to get this 6, 7, 8, 9 in order to play your hand out faster. So obviously the player who has no cards left in their hand will not lose any points. However, if someone manages to play a hand that's strong enough that it goes all the way around the table and comes back to them, they don't have to count the cards in their hand. So you've got two choices. You can either go for a really big play, or you can just try and slowly get all your cards out. And you'll have to change up your strategy on the fly every single round. And it's a really clever little idea. And it does work great, at least for me personally, because I just find it engaging to have just this puzzle in front of me where it's like, okay, I need to get my hand down as far as possible, and I need to find all the opportunities I can to be just playing cards out, to be making new holes, or preparing for a new strategy to go on, potentially waiting for something to come out to be scouted. And that's just a really neat idea. And it's given that tiny little bit more strategy by these fun little cards that are actually what they call Scout and Show tokens, where you can take a card via giving someone a Scout token and then immediately play something out from your hand. Fantastic opportunity for that one last biff, or trying to get as many cards out of your hand as possible because everybody else has only got like 1 or 2 cards left and you know this is going to be a problem. Maybe you'll be able to force them all to scout everything you've got and then give you the win by default because it's gone back around to you. And all of these strategies are it's just a lifeblood of Scout, and it works really well, at least in my opinion. However, it doesn't work so well at 3 players. So the box has support for 2 to 5 players, as you can see on the back of it here. 2 to 5 players. The 2-player variant is new in this version of the game anyway. The thing about 3 players, though, is that if someone manages to put out like a 4-card combo or more, that's kind of it. Because sometimes you'll often have to go all the way around the board, and you'll just get 2 players who can't do anything to beat it, and you'll be done after 2 scouts. You do have your scout and play tokens, but they end up becoming more of a lifeline just because it's like you'll have to use it in order to fend that off. Then the other player will bring out a big hand and there'll be nothing you can do about it. Not to mention, you play the amount of rounds equal to the amount of players, so everyone gets this start player token just the once. So you'll only play 3 rounds, which means you won't get that many opportunities to get points, because of course, if you've got too many cards in your hand, the score will go down. However, if you've got 4 or 5 players, you've got more opportunities to make points, you've got more opportunities to make comebacks, you've got more opportunities to make extra neat little combos. And so as a result, it's more fun playing at 4 and 5 players. Even the 2-player variant is a little bit more interesting, just because instead of making it so that people's hands have to run out, the idea is that you get 3 scout tokens, and you return them to the middle instead of giving them to the opponent when you use them in order to actually scout a card, and the game ends when you can't play or scout. It ends up being an even more interesting game just because it changes up that dynamic enough to avoid the 3-player problem of someone potentially not being able to, the other 2 players not being able to fend off the large card hand that someone just put down. 2 players is fine, 4 players is great, 5 players is great, 3 players is what you should avoid. How often do you see a game do that? And I will admit, the production value of the game itself is nice. Like, this all comes just in the box, already like pushed out of its cardboard or whatever, right? And you'll understand why that is in a minute. The score chips here do their job absolutely fine, and as you can see, like, it's got positive points on one side and negative points on the other. It does the job perfectly well. However, they have added this whole circus theme to it, and if we take a closer look at the cards here, you can see that they've got both a name and a role in the circus here. I'd be lying if I said I found this particularly amusing, but a couple of the people I were playing with were like, yeah, that's kind of neat, I don't mind that. But it has absolutely no effect on the gameplay whatsoever. Also another neat touch. If you're just riffling through the deck, if you're playing with a certain amount of players, it tells you to remove this card. It's kind of nice, actually. However, the presentation is really brought down by one little thing. One really little thing. The box. The box is absolutely tiny for some reason. It is genuinely so small, and I can't figure out why they decided to do it like this, because Here's the thing. You don't just have, like, one set of instructions, right? You've got 4. English, French, German, and I believe the other one was Italian? No, Spanish. Okay, Spanish. And I can understand why they did that. You don't have to waste resources making 4 different versions of the game, and so on and so forth, right? But it makes it really hard to fit everything back in the box. So you grab the cards, you stick them in like that. Easy enough, right? But then you take these and you just try and dump them in, and then you take all of these and you try and dump them in, and then you take all of these and you try and dump them in, and it's just not all going to fit. It's just not all going to fit in a particularly appetizing way. Look at that lid lift, right? They do pack the box like this, but you kind of have to go through this sort of weird little voodoo ritual sort of precision, right? You put the things in the bottom here first, right? Then you put the cards in. Then you got to take the scout tokens and you got to arrange them horizontally so that they fit in like this. And if you put enough tokens in like that, everything else will fit in the box. However, it's just kind of a pain in the neck, if I'm being honest with you. And if you want the easier way to make this happen, at least easier, just take all the languages you're not using and just keep them out of the box. Just keep the one that you're using in the box, and it'll give you a bit more room, and so therefore you don't have to do voodoo magic every time in order to get this box repacked. With that said though, that's probably my biggest complaint, just because it makes the game kind of a pain in the ass to pack up. It's actually a really interesting game, as I said. Just having this random hand of 11 cards and needing to figure out ahead of time how you plan on shrinking this hand down, getting these good scouts off and deciding when the right time is to scout, and using all these opportunities to try and empty your hand as fast as possible is a really engaging puzzle. And it works great at 4 and 5 players, where you've got more opportunities to scout, more opportunities to earn and lose points. But when you're down at 3 players, it means that the rounds can too easily end by someone just putting out a 4-card combo and everyone else already having used their scout and show tokens. The 2-player variant is also alright. Not as good as 4 or 5, but I'll take it as better than 3, if I'm being honest with you. I would recommend it though. I do think it's a fun enough game. Although I will admit it is also quite dry. If you're not a fan of this kind of puzzle, this won't change your mind. It is very much about figuring out ahead of time what I'm going to do with all these cards. With that said, this has been Blue Maxima. I'll see you all next time.